Oh, boom, here we are. Okay, welcome. Typically, I air this show in my closed Facebook group, The Everyday Dog Training Secrets. However, it was a little glitchy today. So instead, we're posting it on my public profile for all of you to see, a discussion that I'm going to have with a kind guest of mine who is giving us her time and expertise, Paddy, who is the owner of Fido and Felix Foods, the raw food experts. So I'm excited to have Paddy here. I think we actually maybe met in person like a few times at a dog class of Barbara's.
Yep, we did. And I've taken classes at your facility in Moose Jaw.
Right. I just didn't have I wasn't there. So, but I
Right.
do remember that. It was a few moons ago, mind you, but welcome. I'm excited to have you here and us discuss this because there's a lot of misunderstandings sometimes about raw feeding and what it entails, and just sometimes a lack of education on the facts of this of doing so. So for anyone who's actually watching this, what I would love for you to do is comment any questions you have, but also hashtag live if you're watching this live, or hashtag replay if you're watching this at a later time, because it really helps for us to get more eyes on this where there's more engagement within the post. So please, also, if you want to see other episodes of The Everyday Dog where we discuss a whole bunch of other things, don't hesitate to join our Everyday Dog group on Facebook, and we will grant you access to that. So without further ado, Paddy, I'd love to know what initially actually brought you into this line of work, if you could share that with me.
Would be just over 20 years ago. I had a dog. He actually came with the acreage when I bought it.
Oh,
And yeah, he was 10 months old and had never seen a vet and ended up getting over vaccinated because that's part of this whole raw feeding picture. That's why I go into that. And he developed allergies. Not even just a whole host of, I won't even call them allergies, just immune related issues,
sure.
infections in the pads of his feet, ear problems, you name it, it happened to that poor dog. So about a year and a half into that problem with him, various problems, going to the vet regularly, spending a fortune, he was on a vet diet. He hated it. It was very expensive. And it solved some of the issues, but then all of a sudden he started to lose the hair on his face in patches, literally bald as a cue ball about the size of a toonie. And a friend had been just nagging me, try raw, because it wasn't a thing. This is 20 years ago. Nobody knew about it. So in desperation, I finally tried it. He had his first solid bowel movement in about 2 years after his first raw meal. And in 2 weeks, all the hair grew back on his face where he
Yeah,
had been
after
bald.
the first meal, it was like his body's like, oh my God, yes, sure. Like,
Exactly.
like what's the transition on kibble? It's like, introduce it in between, 5 to 7 days, gradually from a little bit to a lot more, to ensure the dog doesn't have like a giant spraying bowel movement, right? So that's pretty incredible in comparison. So apologies, but proceed.
Yeah. So I was converted and I just thought people need to know about this. And I had actually just been restructured from my corporate job.
Mm.
And I thought, I'm going to sell raw pet food. And the rest is history.
Just like one day you're like, you know what? People need to know this, and I'm gonna help them.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm
That's
all about educating people and helping them get their pets healthy and keep them that way.
that's amazing. So was it kind of well timed that wherever the corporate gig kind of ran its course, or however that worked out, where then you had this kind of call almost, or nagging feeling like I need to share this with more people, and give people an option or alternative to traditional ways we've fed our dogs.
Yeah, I had been in the customer service industry, and to me, this was just a natural fit. And I was so passionate about it. And I just thought people have to know.
Right. That's super fun. So other than your own, like what you mentioned was very much like a mirror of how I've experienced with one of my own dogs, Fergus.
Mhm.
He has varying health issues, hence why we're back to raw. But nevertheless, I thought it was really important to discuss this. But he's had ear infections forever. He grows tons of ear hair, and
Mhm.
lots of buildup of yeast or whatever the substance is. I'm not a veterinarian. I don't claim to be. So, hot spots, he gets itchy. He's on, some medication to minimize his environmental allergies or food allergies. We don't know. So needless to say, I'm like, you know what, I feel like I got to get back into raw feeding because I feel like a lot of his issues might be potentially due to the various amounts of random ingredients, not random, but many different ingredients within his food. Even a limited ingredient diet, is going to have like 35 ingredients in it. And so,
Mhm.
anyways, needless to say, I'm not also a pet nutritionist by any means. But why feed raw? Raw. What do you have to people that we're like, why is it important to consider raw?
Well, your story is a good lead into that. Um, it's all about what a dog is designed by Mother Nature to eat. They have zero ability to digest carbohydrates, zero. We start to digest carbohydrates as we're chewing them. We have this enzyme called amylase in our saliva.
Right.
Dogs don't have that. So when they eat carbohydrates, their pancreas has to go to work to turn it into energy that their body can use. So there's a stressor right there. All of those carbs in people or animals cause massive amounts of inflammation in the body. 70 to 90% of a dog's immunity, as is ours, is manufactured in the gut. So if you're not eating properly, you are compromising your immunity at the very core. And then it just goes from there. And what
Can I
happens is,
interject just for a quick second? Because what
sure.
you said really, there was a client I was recently speaking with who went to raw recently. Her dog was a younger, healthier dog, but started to have some severe inflammation in her body, and to a point where it was like almost on the table to have like quite invasive like surgeries to try to remedy this, which isn't necessarily going to work. And just to condense all the details, they had
Mhm.
tried things for years, and needless to say, transitioned over to raw, and progressively the dog has gotten better and better, no medication, and has more of a semblance of a normal life for that dog's age. Um, and it's just definitely something for people to really consider, any dog, but especially because you said like the type of stress that it puts on the body. Additionally, it impacts dogs all differently, right? Because if kibble, for example, impacted dogs all the same, well, everyone would be feeding raw, but clearly on some level it's working. So anyways, I just wanted to interject that for a second, but anyway, and because it made me think of that, but continue on. I love what you're saying, and the direction we're going.
Okay. Um, and the issue gets compounded. The dog starts to have inflammation and you go to the vet. And modern medicine, be it for people or animals, is really about treating disease and covering up symptoms. Neither profession is very good at addressing health at that grassroots level, diet, exercise, those sorts of things. So you go to the vet and your dog gets put on an antibiotic or a steroid, and that just compounds the problem.
That's it.
I'll go back to kibble. If you're feeding a grain-free kibble, it's actually worse for your dog than a grain in. Um,
So is
starch
that because lots of the grain frees are using like legumes, for example, like
Well, most of them are using starches, and starches have very high glycemic indexes. Like cooked white potatoes has a higher glycemic index than white table sugar, and yeast feeds on sugar. So most dogs who are eating a grain-free diet are walking systemic yeast infections. Um, and that can take a long time to clear up.
and that's
Uh,
what I noticed too with my Fergus was like I'm like, he can't have potato. This is making his ears explode. Um,
yeah.
like kibble with potato in it, and that's where it kind of like what's the reality, I guess, of like more like legume based. Um,
Well, peas are considered legumes, and they are very, very high in sugar. And peas are often an additive to grain-free dog food.
I have definitely seen that. And then there's other ones like, oh, I can't think of them right now. Lentils.
Lentils are slightly better, but not terribly digestible.
Mhm.
I mean, you look back to Commercial processed food has only been in existence since right after the Second World War. So
Right.
what are we talking, 70, 80, maybe 90 years? Before that, dogs ate whatever was left over, from meals and whatever they could scrounge. And they were much healthier. I maintain that processed shelf-stable food isn't good for anybody, not dogs and not people.
Well, I mean, there's a definite point to that. The more processed anything is for whether it's people and or dogs, by default, the nutritional value is going to go down as well as potential other issues. So keep on keeping on. Anything else you wanted to mention with?
Just, well, it's just a compounding issue that people get caught in that loop, and then and I was there with my original dog, you just end up back at the vet, and then you think you're fixing the problem, but you're compounding the problem. So depending on how long you've been in that loop, it can take quite some time to get your dog straightened out. And some dogs become so damaged, their immune systems, that they're only ever a management case. You'll clear up a lot of their issues, but take Ozzy, for instance, that original dog of mine. He, from his over vaccination, he ended up with some neurological nerve damage in his left ear from the distemper vaccine. And he was just a management case for that ear for his entire life. And the reason I'm bringing this up is so many people view pet food, it's like it's medicine. So I say to people, okay, you have led an unhealthy lifestyle. You don't exercise, you drink too much, you eat the wrong foods, and you have a heart attack. So your cardiologist gets you all fixed up and says, okay, exercise, diet. You do everything he says, you go back for your checkup, but you've still got some high cholesterol. And he says, okay, this is obviously a genetic thing. We're going to have to put you on Lipitor. Are you going to say to him at that point, this whole healthy lifestyle thing didn't work? I'm going to go back to drinking too much booze and eating the wrong food and quit exercising? No, you're not. You're going to continue on with the program. So
Not
many
necessarily.
people,
Some people will.
yeah, well, hopefully you'll carry on with the program. But a lot of people come to me with sick dogs. And if raw doesn't work immediately, there are a certain percentage of people it's like, well, that didn't work. Well, he didn't get unhealthy overnight, and he's not going to get better overnight.
For sure. Yeah,
So that's something.
totally agree. I keep
Yeah.
getting all these calls coming in. Just a second. Sorry. So yeah, any other reasons why you would suggest feeding raw? I mean, you've given some great ones, and I don't think you need any more reasons, but if there was something else that you wanted to share, I mean, feel free to do so.
Well, you're just going to see a vibrantly healthy dog. You're going to see a large breed puppy develop normally, as opposed to how they would develop quickly on kibble, particularly puppy food. A large breed dog shouldn't reach their complete physical maturity and expression of all their genetic stuff until they're about 3 years of age.
Hmm.
So it's just the best thing for them. I mean, you're going to see a beautiful soft coat. You're going to experience less shedding. Your dog isn't going to need dental work. They're going to have fresh breath, beautiful white teeth. There's going to be half the poop in your yard. And it's a fairly compact, drier stool. So cleanup is that much easier on top of the fact that there's less.
Right.
And people say, oh, well, it's more expensive. Well, if you're going for a high-end kibble, it's not more expensive. You can affordably feed a raw diet. And I also say to people, what you save up front on food, you're going to spend on the back end at the vet.
Well, I can vouch for that. And I love my vet. I'm not saying it has anything to do with them, but if the kibble is not helping, I've spent thousands of dollars with my specific dog trying to figure out what's he allergic to. Let's try all these various diets, elimination diets and kangaroo diets. And anyways, it's become a management thing now, but I can agree with, hypothetically, if I had fed raw for him in the start, I might have mitigated some of these issues. And realistically, I'm spending the same amount on a higher priced kibble as I would be for raw, like recently. So
Yeah.
just even looking, because obviously another piece of it is like, well, if it's the same price, well, kibble's more convenient, yes. However, it's also like kind of almost considering like, but look what it looks like compared to what was put into it. Like it's these tiny little brown kibbles, right? So it's not like when I open the raw thing, I'm like, I can see there's meat there. It's red. It looks vibrant. I mean, this is by default going to presumably make my dog feel more vibrant just from how it looks. So to me, it's just interesting because I fed kibble for years, and I'm not saying people shouldn't, but I'm also open to some potentials and possibilities of, continually doing things better in my own life, but also in those around me. So that's why I really wanted to get into this conversation with you.
Yeah.
And to your point, like I started feeding my dog Fergus raw recently, and I didn't even transition him. Like it was like I put a little tiny few scraps of kibble in, and then I just fed him, and like nothing happened. His guts didn't explode. He didn't wake me up in the middle of the night to go poop. Whereas I know if I would have switched, most commonly, let's say I switch meal per meal with a different kibble, it really
Mhm.
has an impact on their guts. So it was just kind of by necessity because I didn't want to transition slower because I was getting close to running out of food. So it wasn't like I knew that it would work. I was just rolling the dice and being like, I hope he doesn't spray all over my house, but we'll see what happens. So anyways.
Well, just as an aside, for the entire length of my business, and it's how I made the switch, I recommend a fast switch, which is if it's a puppy, you fast, nothing but fresh water for 12 hours.
Oh,
Adult, fast them for 24 hours, nothing but fresh water, and go straight to raw. Because generally, you were lucky. Of course, it sounds like you only put a little bit of kibble in there. Generally, you're going to experience that explosive diarrhea episode if you mix kibble with raw. They just don't mix well. And the reason for that, because people always ask me this, so I'll quickly tell you, is kibble takes 8 to 12 hours to get through the digestive tract.
mhm.
Raw takes 3 to 5. And they are absolutely designed to deal with the bacteria in raw food. It's what allows them to drink out of puddles, eat poop, and lick their behinds.
Right.
So when you mix those two in there, though, and I will say they have a short muscular digestive tract, which moves that raw through quite fast, as I said, 3 to 5 hours. When you mix kibble and raw in that digestive tract together at the same time, you can get what's called the bacteria bloom. And that is because the kibble is holding that raw in the digestive tract. So it's like throwing raw meat into something, well, like a warming environment, and that bacteria can just blossom. And if you're talking about a puppy, a sick dog, or a senior, you can, and I have seen people end up at the vet from doing that. So that's why I recommend the fast switch.
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you explain it like that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's perfect. What are some more like frequently asked questions that people come to you with, when they're either hesitant or curious about a raw diet? Is there anything that comes to mind that you'd love to share with people?
Well, I have people come to me with older dogs and they wonder, is the dog too old to make the switch? Is it too late? It is never too late. I've seen senior dogs, 12 years old, turn into puppies overnight. Um, Another thing I'll add is it's great for weight loss. If you've got a dog who's overweight or worse than that, obese, raw is the way to go. That weight is going to fall off because dogs are designed for the keto diet, the Atkins diet. You take the carbs away and the weight falls right off. And no overweight dog is healthy or happy. Um, yeah, people ask me, how soon can I put my puppy on? A lot of vets will recommend, keeping the puppy on dry food for that first year of its life. Well, I supply breeders and they start weaning puppies to raw at 4 and 5 weeks. They're still getting mom's milk and they're starting to eat raw food. You just sort of have to mix it up with a slurry, sort of lots of liquid added to it. So it's never too early, basically, and it's never too late to start raw.
For
Um,
sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of questions that people ask.
Well, I heard through the grapevine that if you feed raw, potentially your dog might start like wanting to go like kill prey animals and eat them. Is that true?
No,
I'm just teasing,
absolutely not.
but it's true if you
Um,
think of it. But it's yes,
I've heard that as well. People say, oh, if once they get the smell of blood or the taste of
yes,
blood, they're going to become a vicious beast. And it's just not the case. It's just
right.
not how it works. I've had people who have hunting dogs. This is another example of that. And they are trained to go out and hunt with that person and retrieve. And they're afraid to feed them poultry because they think it might translate into, I'm going to eat the duck instead of bring it back to my person. And that doesn't happen either. It's just not how their brains work.
For sure. no differently than if I eat a nice red steak. I'm not going to go take a bite out of a cow on the side of the road because I'm a ravenous beast now because I've got some red meat in me.
Right. Exactly.
So I guess
Oh, another thing we'll talk about. It's a huge topic these days, balanced and complete.
Hmm.
Balanced and complete is a notion that has been brought into existence by kibble companies. Because when you're taking, well, whether it's questionable ingredients in some or even high quality ingredients and you're extruding them or cooking them at high temperatures really fast, that live food is dead.
right.
So then you have to add back your vitamins and minerals. Well, when you're adding back synthetic vitamins and minerals, you have to do that in balance. If you get that out of balance, you can cause illness in an animal in a big hurry. Whereas real food doesn't work like that. I tell people to think of their pet's diet like they do their own. And a healthy human diet, it contains lots of variety, hopefully, of whole fresh foods over a 2 to 3 week period. And that's how you get balance in the diet: meats, fruits, vegetables, and a whole variety of different things, cheeses, whatever. And that's how you get balance in your pet's diet. There is a growing trend and movement in raw pet food about complete and balanced every meal. It's just not a normal way to look at food. I say to women, like, when you make a meal for your family, do you whip out the Canada's Food Guide and make sure that, all the nutrients are present in every meal? And they look at me and go, no. And I say, well, you should think about your pet's diet in the same way. People talk about vitamins and minerals. Well, that comes from a whole, healthy, fresh diet. Quite frankly, we don't even know. There's been very little scientific research done into how much a dog needs of certain vitamins and minerals. So adding them back in artificially is just not the way to go. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Well, also, like, what I was thinking too was that those minerals and nutrients, presumably when they get back added in, they'd be cooked again and there'd be some breakdown of those things. So it's almost like they have to overcompensate sometimes with additional more than what they would put if the dog was actually consuming it on top of their kibble, for example.
Right.
When the rendering process, when they have to re-cook it again with some other component to bind.
Yeah, exactly. And people refer to AFCO, the feeding trials about, oh, that's the gold standard supposedly about what should be in a pet's meal. Well, quite frankly, those trials, the only benchmark they have to meet is an animal has to be able to survive on this food, not thrive,
Yeah,
not be their best self, just survive. So I think we're wanting to raise the bar a little more than that.
agree for sure. What about as far as like supplementing? So let's say a person chooses a raw diet and they want to whatever buy some beef for their dog, and it's like a raw. And I'm not saying a homemade raw, but I'm like, you purchase a raw product from someone like yourself with whatever the brand is, or your house brand, for example. It's like, do people need to feed additional things to support that diet as far as like whatever? I mean, I don't know, kefir or something, or goat's milk, or some kind of oils.
Oh, my training and belief in raw feeding is dogs, their closest wild relative are wolves. They differ from wolves in their DNA by about 1 to 2%. So that's the diet that I look to. So your main components of the diet are always going to be meat and bone with some organ meat. Puppies have a higher requirement for organ meat. Green matter, I believe it's best to be stomach contents. So I always recommend tripe, and dogs love it. It's kind of disgusting, but they love it. When we get into adding fruits and vegetables, if you're going to add fruits and vegetables, you basically want to stick to leafy greens or berries if you want to, mimic as natural a diet as possible.
Right.
So when supplementing, I just say to people, you want at least a red and a white protein for sure. But once again, the greater variety of proteins you can get into that diet, the healthier it is, because each protein offers its nutrients in different quantities. But as long as you got the meat and the bone and the organ, those are the main components of your canine's diet. You can add in tripe, you can add in raw eggs, that would be a natural thing. And I also say to people, leftovers aren't bad as long as they're home cooked and healthy. Like very little in my house goes to waste. So if I've got some leftovers that I'm not going to be eating, they go into the dog's dish, and I just cut back on the food, like the raw food that I'm feeding. Because once again, that adds different nutrients and variety to the diet. As far as supplementing things like oils, people have always said to me, feet to the fire, you have to recommend one supplement for the life of my dog. Well, I'm going to tell you that's going to be a really high quality omega-3 supplement.
Okay.
It's just so beneficial for skin and coat, reduces inflammation in the body if there is any present. And it should be not plant-based. Plant-based, like flax, for instance, is an inactive omega-3 fatty acid. Humans, we can process that. We can activate that fatty acid. Dogs cannot. Okay. So it should be, like a fish-based, salmon, krill, anchovy, mackerel, something like that. And it should be heat and light sensitive. Should be in a dark bottle and should be need to be stored in the fridge after you open it. And other supplements from there.
I just wanted to let you know, I'm actually making notes of this because this is super good information for anyone. So when I'm writing down, it's not, my attention's not detracted. I'm like, yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I really tend to go easy on other supplements. If you're supplementing for a health problem, that's a different matter. But in terms of daily general supplements, I throw 1 vitamin E capsule a day into the dog's dishes, 400 international units, because it's got a lot of health benefits. I do use the omega-3. Other than that, I have to admit, I don't do much. In the winter, they get a D3 drop in their food. And maybe twice a year, I'll open a
just lost audio for you.
Mineral supplement that I will, and it's generally a green powder. The one I carry right now is made by Omega Alpha. They make great supplements, and it's called Nutrify, and it's basically sea vegetables. And so, yeah, a couple of times a year, just to fill any nutritional gaps, I'll go through a jar of that. But other than that, unless it's for a health problem, I don't bother. I will go back to one great additive, and I do this with a lot of new customers who come to me whose dogs have health problems, because a lot of them do, and that would be raw, unpasteurized sauerkraut. It is the best prebiotic, probiotic, so amazing for digestion. So it's a great additive. So some people look at that as a supplement. I look at it as a food item.
I like sauerkraut, so that'd be easy.
I do too. But it's got to be unpasteurized from the refrigerator case. It can't be the shelf stable stuff, because that stuff's dead.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So is that why sometimes people mention like the Kefir or goats, whatever it was, I can't remember, is for the probiotics?
That is why some people.
Flora.
Right. But once again, well, nothing should consume dairy, quite frankly, after it's weaned. Not you, not me, not the dog, not the cat. What was that?
I said, but I love it.
I know, I'm a real cheese fan. I hear you. And ice cream too. But yeah, I find raw unpasteurized sauerkraut is a much better option. Okay. You get better results like right now. Tablespoon of that in your dog's food. If their stomach's a little bit off, from eating something, and they're going to be fixed up right as rain. Their breath is going to go back to being nice and sweet.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I was actually going to ask you, like, well, how much? So that's cool. And then it also helps with that, because sometimes when dogs have unsettled stomach, you hear use some pumpkin or whatever.
That's something I'll address, pumpkin. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to add pumpkin to every meal. There are actually raw food brands out there that have pumpkin in every meal. It's not meant to be fed regularly. Pumpkin is a bowel regulator. So if your dog has constipation or diarrhea, it fixes both. But it should only be fed for that reason for a brief time. Because once again, it's in that family of vegetables where it's actually got a fairly high sugar content.
Yeah, for sure. That's why it's delicious in pie,
Yeah.
along with sugar.
I agree.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was incredibly informative, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to come on here and chat with me about that. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? Where can people find you? Are you on the Facebooks or internet or?
Yeah, I have well, actually, before I give you this information, I got one more thing I want to touch on because I talk to people about it every time I talk to a customer. Some of them, even my existing customers, and I posted about it on my Facebook page the other day. Two things I say to people: do your research about vaccines
Hmm.
so that your dog doesn't get over vaccinated. And one of the best sources for that, her name is Dr. Jean Dodds. That's Dodds.
Mhm.
She's like the North American veterinary expert. She's done so many studies. She actually has a vaccine protocol, which is the one that I follow. If your dog is immune compromised, like one of mine, he doesn't get vaccines anymore. I titer instead of vaccinating, because when you over vaccinate your dog, you're damaging their immune system. So I see people coming to me and their dog's been doing great, and all of a sudden they're completely off the rails, and they have very likely just recently been vaccinated and didn't need to be.
I have a
The
quick
other,
question relating to that.
sure, go ahead.
Do you know anyone or anywhere that you would recommend that does those titer tests where it's not like 10 times the cost of a vaccination?
I know Lakewood Animal Hospital in Regina does. I believe. Well, see, I don't want to, I know there are other vets. I can actually do my research and check. I would rather do that, and then I can.
Sure. I'm just curious
What
because
to do?
I've been in that position where I'm like, oh, I'd like to do a titer, but I'm like, it's gonna be like $400, and this vaccination's like 60. So I'm like,
Yeah, really, a titer test is a little over $100.
yeah,
So, and the health benefits to your dog can literally be huge and lifelong.
right.
So yeah, I
I mean,
would
I
urge.
guess maybe if you could explain that just to summarize what that test is, because some people might not know what we're talking about.
Oh, it's a blood test, and it measures the level of immunity your dog has to the diseases that they would be vaccinated for. Not rabies. You can do a titer test for rabies, but it's a different test, and it needs to be sent down to the US, I believe, to get the results. But your regular parvo, distemper, is it leptospirosis is the other one they vaccinate for? I can't remember. I haven't vaccinated in a lot of years.
Parainfluenza. I can't think
Yes.
what the other ones are off the top.
Anyway, it's a blood test, and it measures your dog's immunity to those things that they would be vaccinated for in that one shot.
Right. So then you can determine whether or not your dog actually requires that additional shot.
Exactly. Another thing I would recommend, um, kennel cough. It's like trying to vaccinate your child for the common cold. It's impossible. It doesn't work. And it's very damaging to your dog's immune system. My first dog, that's what pushed him over the edge, was he got vaccinated for kennel cough, because 20 years ago I didn't know any different. And 3 weeks after that, his health went completely off the rails. It was sort of like the icing on the cake.
Do they now though? Is there some kennel cough that is like a sniff one, or am I just making that
That's
up?
the one that he got.
Oh, was
That's
it?
been around for 20 years. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Um,
fair enough.
I know there are boarding facilities out there that will accommodate no vaccines, no kennel cough. They'll let you feed raw. There's some great facilities out there, because a lot of people say, well, my daycare or my boarding facility requires it. The other thing I just posted on, as I said the other day, it's flea and tick season, not fleas in Saskatchewan, but ticks. Flea and tick medicine is poison. It's absolute poison. It's like pouring a bottle of DEET over your child to keep the mosquitoes away. Lyme disease isn't so much of an issue in Saskatchewan, and life is full of calculated risks. So I live in the country. I mean, I'll come back for a walk, and in years where the ticks were bad, I quit counting at 300, picking them off the dogs. But nobody's ever gotten sick, including me. And I would rather pick the ticks off, or there are natural products. I've got one. Um, it's called Pet Mix. It used to be called Tick Off, but Health Canada got involved, and they
Oh,
had to
I've heard
change
that
the
name.
name of it. But it's an essential oil blend. It's applied the same way at the shoulders and the tail
Okay.
as the poison is. But yeah, there's a reason that flea and tick stuff works, because it's poison. That's why the pests die or stay away. So I urge people to rethink that one, because you can be doing everything right, but if you're over vaccinating or using flea and tick, all of your raw feeding hard work is probably going to go right out the window at some point.
Yeah, so it definitely has impact, and everything is kind of integrated
Yeah.
as far as a whole with what's getting into our dogs or onto them.
Yeah.
Was there something else that you wanted to mention, or was that the second one?
I think that was the second one. It was the vaccines and the flea and tick.
Okay. So how can people get in touch with you?
I have a Facebook page, Fido and Felix Foods. I have an Instagram feed, and I have a website. You can order my products online. I deliver basically all over Saskatchewan. I have retailers who carry my new brand up in Saskatoon, and I've got one in BC. Yeah, my email's on there, my phone number's on there. I'm not hard to get a hold of.
For sure. And I will tag it in the comments of this post as well as on the post. So without further ado, I really enjoyed this conversation with you. It was great to see you again and learn a lot more about the benefits of raw feeding and things to consider just in general, but with feeding your dog. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
Perfect. Well, until next time, I'll be logging into your website soon to make an order. That I
Sounds good.
you.